Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk. Light Talk. Light Talk. Lumen Brothers. Light Talk.
Good morning. This is Stan in Gainesville, Florida, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Hi, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas, and today we are speaking with Bobby Hale of High End Systems on Light Talk.
And this is David in the beautiful Belmont Shore neighborhood of Long Beach, California. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers.
Plus
oh my God.
Bobby. Plus Bobby.
Plus Bobby. Oh boy, we have a show today. We have Bobby Hale here with us from High End Systems. We're going to talk about a lot of really cool things. But before we start,
Tell us, David, what is it?
this is episode 100.
No kidding. We're still going like Energizer bunnies. What is wrong with us?
Oh my God, we need a pyrotechnician, someone licensed.
Yeah, we need some good pyro.
Well, we got
like
some
on
pyro.
the Super Bowl. No, not like that. Not like
No,
that.
no, that was excellent pyro. I
Was the
thought that
pyro was good,
fantastic.
yeah.
We had a long talk in our grad class about pyro.
We
As a
did
matter
too.
of fact.
Didn't we do about that on an episode about how not to do it?
Right, what not to do. And what not to do is to do pyro
without a license.
without a license. Okay, so today we have Bobby Hale with us. So, Steve, why don't you give us a little bio about Bobby?
Well, Bobby Hale attended the University of Texas in Austin, and while he was there, he was introduced to lighting at local dance clubs. So he was busking lights at Backstreet, and he was going old school with arc line pin spots, the pulsar controller, Comar Venus, and the Laser Chorus Vipers.
Wow.
And then in 1991, he joined High End Systems. Early years, he worked in manufacturing and inside sales. In 1992, he became project manager for Richard Bellevue in the engineering department. Later, program manager for Mike Wood, and then back to product manager for digital lighting from 2000 to 2004. He created a new market space for DMX-controlled video, Catalyst Media Server.
We know Catalyst. Right.
Yeah, and video projector-based automated lighting. The Orbital Head by Peter Wynne Wilson and Tony Cotillier. That would be the DL1 and the DL2. He became engineering operation manager from 2005 to 2015, and he is currently regional sales manager for Northeast United States. That's Tennessee, North Carolina, up to Maine, that whole coast. And I have to tell you, I'm sorry he did that because he was my sales manager in Texas, and I miss him.
Oh,
I know.
bet you
Yeah,
do.
what happened there? Why'd they move you up there? It's cold up there.
Well,
A lot of work.
yeah. So when I first moved into sales, I was sales manager for fixed installation. So I focused a lot of my energy on universities, and that's how I was lucky enough to meet you, David, out in Cal State, Long Beach, Stan at the University of Florida, and of course Steve at Southern Methodist University. So when we were actually purchased or acquired by ETC, I was told to choose a region, and I was given the East Coast. So that's how that all transpired.
But you still live in Texas, right?
But I still live in Austin, Texas. Yeah, we're headquartered in Austin, Texas, and we've just signed another 10-year lease in this building, so we're going to be here for a little bit.
You know, it amazes me that High End is still in business because back in 1991, I don't know if you know this, Bobby, but I was actually recruited by a headhunter for High End to be their CFO.
Good thing it didn't happen.
Boy,
I did not know. Sorry.
A CFO. I don't know how to add. Well, I do know how to add, but division is kind of tough sometimes. And I said, no, you got the wrong guy.
I thought that might be creative fine arts
Officer,
officer.
creative fine arts officer, right? Creative flunky officer.
It was funny because
boy.
the recruiter said, I can't tell you which company it is, but they're a major moving light company in Texas, and they're not VariLite. So what I think what happened is that someone at VariLite said, hey, we know somebody who'd be really good to run the finances of this company.
Backdodge sabotage. Oh no, corporate sabotage.
Yeah, that's the
That's
truth. I'm
wild.
not kidding you. So congratulations, Bob. Bobby, it's so great to have you on the show.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And before we get started or I start answering more questions, I just want to say congratulations on 100 episodes. As I stated earlier, I knew you guys prior to you being Lumen
did.
Brothers because we had the friend and business relationship. And when you guys were talking about this idea, I thought it was a great idea. I didn't know how you were going to come up with content to do it.
Did we?
We-
I
we
remember
don't
when
really.
you said that. Well, 3-4 shows and you'll be done, right? Look what's happened.
No, I was thinking maybe once a month, but
So
the fact
was
that
I.
you've churned out 100 episodes, that's a testament to your creativity. So congrats.
Well, thank you.
Thank you very much. We didn't expect it either, to be honest.
We're coming up on our second anniversary, which is amazing. I mean, in like 4 shows from this show, we'll be starting our second season. And we've been doing it every single week since for 2 years.
Don't remind me.
But we should thank Bobby because if you guys remember, the initial phone call where we thought of doing this crazy show had to do with the solar spot.
It did. Should we retell that story?
Well, you called me, Stan, about the solar spot.
I
and then
did.
I said something. I was doing a show in Chicago.
That's right.
Stan, I think, was in Florida at the time.
Yeah.
And I said, okay, well, we're talking about, because Stan was considering buying them. And I had seen them at LDI. I was very impressed. And then I said something like, well, let's get Steve on the phone.
Yeah, you said Steve's buying some too, and I said, well, let's have a conference call. And then
Right.
and I called Steve, and we got the 3 of us together, and we started to discuss the fixture. But what was really funny was that these 2 guys, the 3 of us, we were cracking each other up. And I said, you guys are cracking me up. And I said, this is like car talk for lights. And that was the moment when we went, I wonder if we could do that. And that's how the show was born.
So we can thank High End Systems for that. And you, Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby, you were there at the genesis of this show. It's
Well, thank
true.
you. I do remember that story though. That's a good one.
Yeah, it's a good one.
What a great way to come up with an idea.
So yeah, speaking of history and how things get started, I've got the first question for our good friend Bobby Hale. And we want to know, were you interested in stage lighting when you went to UT or in busking, or was that sort of a sideline?
This was definitely a sideline. So I was at the University of Texas I was in the business school, and my junior year, I took a little time out and looked at my resume, and I noticed that nothing said I can survive in an office environment. So I was a bartender, a waiter, a lifeguard in high school, and of course, my little part-time gig, busking lights. So it just so happened that the light that I was busking lights in had something called the laser chorus. Well, the laser chorus was developed by LightWave Research, which was the research and development arm of High End Systems. So I looked on the back of the product, saw an address, and looked it up in the phone book, because back then we didn't have Google.
Phone books. Wow, yeah.
And so I took a cab ride up to LightWave Research, and on my 4th try to get a job, they said, wow, you're a persistent guy. We're going to hire you. So that started my history at High End Systems in April of 1991.
Wow. Persistence.
So really, it was by accident that. So to your question, no, I didn't know anything about stage lighting. It was just the fact that I was in a nightclub busking lights, and coincidentally, High End Systems was in Austin.
So I understand if this doesn't work out, you have a fallback position. You're a
Lifeguard.
licensed. You're a licensed broker, aren't you?
A broker?
Yes, mortgage broker.
No kidding.
But that's something that I did a few years back. But now that I'm in sales, I don't have time to be the proper fiduciary agent for somebody.
So you can't get me a better rate then, I guess.
Not this time. Loan Depot.
For those who haven't seen Bobby, he's a very good-looking guy.
He's a good-looking guy.
And I could just see
boy.
him up on that lifeguard stand.
yeah.
Right? I could just see you, man. I'm surprised you left that industry.
I personally do not close my eyes and see you scantily clad on a lifeguard stand, Bobby. just so you know.
All right. So, hey, Bobby, High-End Systems has quite a history that many may not know. Why don't you tell us that story?
You know, when I think about high-end systems, I've been here 28 years, and you know, there are multiple parts to the history of high-end systems. So the original part that I remember is when I joined, and Richard Bellevue, Lowell Fowler, Bob Schockrell, they were manufacturing Color Pro, Intellibeam 700, and the emulator. Yeah. So these were some staples that they were manufacturing and selling to people that were system integrators, as well as in the beginning starting to actually use these on concert tours. So when I say multiple parts, this is the part of the high-end history that I saw high-end system as they changed the business model in our industry, basically. So prior to that, if you wanted to have lighting, and you pretty much went to VariLite, and VariLite would like rent you their lights and send out their technicians. So when we actually started developing Cyberlight and the subsequent Solo Spot 575 and the Studio Color 575, those were actual lights that people could actually purchase, put in their rental inventory, and then make the profit on the renting of the product to the end user. So that sort of changed the business model. Up until then, I don't want to say it was a monopoly because I'm sure there are others out there, but VariLite was the company you would go to if you wanted to go tour. So in that sense, at that time, I believe high-end systems made some great products, but it was more about disrupting the industry and changing the business model. The people like Upstaging and Bandit Lights, and I'm probably leaving out some big companies that we did business with, but they could actually purchase our lights and rent them and make all the profit from that.
Something I remember about those days, and I remember speccing Cyberlights on some shows that I did, they had a reputation too, even though VariLite was out of touch for some people like me. And I just remember they had a reputation of being built like a tank. Like you could just tour with high-end stuff and they just didn't break. They just really held up well. Did you find that was sort of a common perception of the company as well in terms of quality?
Yes, we built some quality products, and I don't know if any of you have met Richard Bellevue, but he was the chief technology officer and was a self-taught engineer, used to work on automobiles and just basically tinker with electronics. So when he actually got into developing lights, a lot of the things he learned as a tinkerer and as an automotive like customizer or mechanic, a lot of those influenced the high-end product.
Interesting, because they were sort of built like a tank. I felt like they were built like a tank.
Definitely. And back then, we have to remember there were a lot less moving parts.
True.
As well, because we didn't. I mean, I remember Cyberlight was one of the first that had rotating gobos.
Oh,
that might sound really crazy to the listening audience that's younger, but yeah, a lot of our products early on just had fixed patterns.
But they were litho patterns. The litho patterns were beautiful.
Yeah, so that was some of the innovation that high end brought to the table. So I said I see high end as in different parts of the history they played different roles. So there was an innovative part of high end as well. So that would encompass the lithography that we brought to the industry, and then subsequent to that, digital lighting.
I was just going to say, I love the Cyberlight. I always loved the Cyberlight, and I thought the Cyberlight was built like a brick, Yeah. And compared to PAL 1200s, which actually were sort of the Cyberlight's competition. Wouldn't you say so, Bobby? Because they were both scanners. They were both 1200 watts, right? Yeah,
so early on, I do recall Martin being like somebody that seemed to be going toe-to-toe with. Right. They too were also selling their products into nightclubs and to whomever wanted to buy them to put them on tours. We made something called the Track Spot. Yeah. I think they came out with something called the Martin 218. So it seemed like every time one company made a move, which was typically high-end made the first move, then Martin would do something to counterbalance it.
Right.
So, but yeah, to your point about Cyberlight, it was a rock-solid product.
Rock solid.
It's, aluminum extrusion, and if you look inside one of those today, you marvel at how much space we had inside those things. Now, like the design of our products, you can barely get like a sheet of paper between some of the modules because we're trying to make everything so compact. The Cyberlight, you could almost like store your lunch.
Yeah, what I loved about the Cyberlight, It had incredible optics. I mean, and it had the best gobo morphing at the time. Nobody could come close to the way you can morph gobos on that. And I must say that the Cyberlights were the first moving lights I ever used in box booms. And ever since I put my first Cyberlight into a box boom, I'd always just put them on their, on their bottoms, standing straight up. I've always used moving lights in box booms since then. And the Cyberlight's a great light. I'd still use it nowadays. It's a terrific light.
It's still being used at the Houston Rodeo by LE Systems. Those things are
that's cool to hear.
Probably 2 decades old. But
Wow.
I do have an interesting story about the Cyberlight. So the first 1,200 watt fixture that we designed back in the early days was not actually the Cyberlight. It was actually something that we were commissioned by Stefan Graf with Fantasy Lighting. I believe that was the name of the company. And there was something called the Chrysler Dome that was being built in Michigan. And the idea was Chrysler would have this magnificent domed car show room. And within this room, they wanted to have moving lights. So they came to us and we made basically a bigger and uglier Cyberlight that would fit in this dome. And the fixtures themselves were hidden outside the dome, and there would be a little porthole that would pop out, and the door would swing over, and the 1,200 watt Chrysler fixture would shine through these holes down onto the floor, illuminating the automobile. So we had a little bit of a test run before we developed Cyberlight. So that's sort of an interesting, piece of history that I don't know too many people remember.
I didn't know that.
Or ever knew
Yeah,
about.
I hadn't
That's
heard
really
that
cool.
story. Are they still there? Did it happen? Was it?
Just like any good salesperson, there was a high-end salesperson that went in and replaced them with Cyberlight.
Interesting.
So I have a question there. What do you think the future of scanners are? They seem to fall in and out of favor, and they seem to be back in favor right now.
ETC is always working on new and innovative solutions.
Is that the company line?
That's a company line. But no, high end, over the years, every 2 or 3 years, someone comes to us and they're like, we really would like high end to build another scanner. So I guess, it's quite obvious now that we have LED engines that some people may prefer to have an LED-based scanner. So
why not?
We'll just have to keep our eyes out in the future.
I was going to say there's something about the speed of the snap of the mirror because it's so fast. I know we don't have the same range. We just can a yoke-based fixture change position as quickly as a scanner can, Bobby?
Too much mass to be moved, so I would say no. Not the type of scanners that we can afford to design into our products and then subsequently sell to the end users. I'm sure the military has some really high-speed servos that can probably keep up with a moving mirror, but we could never afford to specify it or sell it.
There is something really, in terms of that sharp move that was like, I remember watching Intellibeams move on concerts and go, man, that's just, this so to accent a note. It's just so, that speed is really remarkable.
That's a good point. My friend Kevin Sorg, who works at Disney Anaheim, he's the lighting designer and director for the Anaheim Ducks, which is that hockey team in Anaheim. They have the Cyber 2.0s. So those are getting long in the tooth, and that facility is trying to move to all LED. So I was like, hey, I've got this great product. It's the Sola Spot 2000, and Kevin was absolutely not. When our team is down, I have this cue where the mirrors move from out in at such a fast rate that it really gets the crowd going.
Yeah.
And
I've been there.
The team
I've seen
will not
it.
let us. Yeah, the team will not let us replace those lights with anything that isn't as fast as that, because that really adds to the home team
See,
advantage.
I would think I would like to have some scanners in any rig because of that, just for that feature alone.
Let me ask you a question. You're walking in both worlds. You've been an engineer. You've been a salesperson. How did you get into engineering? Do you miss it? I mean, you had a business degree.
I do miss being in design meetings because it's a very creative environment, and it's just really fun to solve engineering problems. And there's a bit of a rush when you finish. You get a piece of paper for marketing, and it says it needs to be this, this, and this, and you draw out a timeline, and you budget money towards it, and then you iterate through the whole process. And in the end, there's a great feeling of satisfaction, obviously. But just the day-to-day, being in design meetings and arguing points and just the whole creative process, I do miss that for sure. But, sales is it's a different type of problem solving, because obviously we're trying to sell high-end system solutions to solve customer problems. So it's different. It's not as confrontational, but I do miss it, definitely.
You want to go back to the timeline, because I think we stopped you at a certain point in the timeline of high end.
I think I was talking about the 575 series and how we're changing the business model, and then came the big VariLite lawsuit that VariLite claimed that we had infringed upon some of their patents. So obviously, we all spent too much money paying the attorneys, and the final outcome was we cross-licensed our intellectual property.
Yeah.
The VariLite lawsuit was a tremendous financial drain on the company. And during that time, we looked for financial partners to help us weather the litigation storm. So Lowell, Bob, and Richard were seeking venture capital money, and they came upon a company called Generation Partners out of New York City. So that took us to a different phase at high-end systems. In that phase, I was still a project manager in engineering, and in my bio, Steve said that I started to work for Mike Wood. So Mike Wood was hired out of the UK to come help us with our engineering efforts here at high-end systems. So I worked for him as a program manager, and we worked on a bunch of projects. I guess the most notable one would be XSpot. And as things happen, the venture capitalists decided they wanted to move the pieces within the company, and they hired a vice president of operations, two of them actually, but the final one was a gentleman from Dell that wanted to add a lot of Dell-type manufacturing practices to high-end, and subsequent to that, they put this gentleman in charge of managing the engineering department. So at that time, Mike Wood got promoted to chief technology officer, and I was moved into product management. And so that was actually a godsend to me, because they put me in charge of something called we called it digital lighting, but we didn't really understand what we had at the time. So I was just given, I think it was like 2 project names. So we had 2 products, and at the time, the industry was also changing. So we had lighting people fighting with video people over budgets for shows. So it was like back in the late 1990s, it was 1998, 99 when we really were like, okay, who's actually in control of the show, the video director or the lighting director? So Mike Wood and Nils out of our marketing department, one of the original Flying Pig founders, had a relationship with Richard Bleasdale, and he was working on a product that gave people DMX control over video. So at that point in time, when I moved to product management, they said, hey, you have this product, which is a DMX video server, and then this other product by Peter Wynn Wilson and Tony Cotillier, it's the Orbital Head. And it was basically it's a periscope design, basically 2 mirrors that work in conjunction with each other. You send light through it, which is how they sold it to Comar as the NAT. It was a periscopic head that was on top of a scanner, or in lieu of having a moving mirror. So it would cover, projecting 360 degrees around. So they took that product, and we redesigned it to fit on the front of large format projectors. Those 2 products married together actually created digital lighting. So we really didn't know what we
had something special.
We knew that we wanted to invest in this in time, money, and personnel. And so in the beginning, we were pretty much trying to create a brand new market space called digital lighting. And we were quite successful. Over a period of 2 or 3 years, I became 50% of high-end systems top-line revenue. So Richard Bleasdale did a great job, developing the code for the Catalyst media server. It was based on Apple, I think it was G3, then G4, then G5
I remember that.
workstations, and we did a lot with the Orbital Head, and actually the Orbital Head got so much attention that Barco actually came and bought like 100 of them. They were the first customer for the Orbital Head back in 2002, and then it's like 6 years later they came and bought
ironic, isn't it?
So, yeah, it's funny.
Wow.
So those were my years. So from 2000 until 2005, I was the product manager for digital lighting here at High End Systems, and it was a great run. It was like back then. Even now, it's like we're in the lighting industry. We're all friends, but there was a product called Green Hippo that started up, and it was a PC-based media server. So Nigel and I would often see each other at trade shows, and we'd lend each other like VGA cables or whatever piece of GAC we forgot. So I was very, even to this day, we're all very friendly, right? We're in the lighting industry,
which is great. It's great to be in an industry where people treat each other with respect and like each other.
Exactly. This is fun, guys. Right? We're fortunate to be in this industry to get paid to do this.
But tell us about the Hog and how that came about.
Oh, the Hog. Okay, so the Hog was a Flying Pig product. The Flying Pig Systems guys and High End Systems had a meeting, and basically there was a merger. But yeah, it was a great time. We helped fund the continued development of Hog 3.
I can remember when Hog first came out and people were struggling with how to control moving lights and everything was a number. And I know what got me excited was this idea of palettes and that I could name things in English. And so I thought this is fantastic. And then and that this notion of a reference that the Q references a palette, but the palette where I could call it Stan Blue, right? And that didn't exist before Hog. Did it exist anywhere before that? Maybe in VariLite consoles, but I never saw it anywhere else where I could name things like that.
The Flying Pig Systems guys, all very brilliant people, and I did get to spend about 2 weeks with them when I was over in England. We were building the first media servers and orbital heads in the Northfield Flying Pig office. And so I got to spend 2 weeks with them. And one of the quotes that I remember hearing from Beaky was, and we were at the pub, and I noticed that most of their employees were either from Cambridge or Oxford at the time. And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting. And Beaky said, hey, listen, I can't teach a programmer to be a smart person, but I can teach a smart person to become a programmer. And I was like, wow, that's pretty profound.
That's interesting.
At that point, we're like, okay, what's the next level for digital lighting? And obviously, it was obvious to everybody, including PRG with the LSD Medusa. Why not build a projector into a moving light? So that was sort of like at the time the Holy Grail. So Richard Bellevue, while he was on a sabbatical, wrote a lot of intellectual property around digital lighting. So in 2006, I believe it was 2006, he was asked to come back and lead development of digital lighting, and with the goal of building a truly integrated digital light. So having a light engine in a moving head with a media server on board. So at the time, we had developed DL1, which had a moving projector on a robotic light, like a pan and tilt fixture, but it still took like a 5-wire external signal. So we were connecting the Catalyst media server via 5-wire BNC to these DL1. So it was like a bit kludgy for the mainstream. The people got it, but it was the next product in the evolution, but we really needed to get into the integrated. So that would have been DL2, which was the first product that had a media server that was PC based. All the graphic engine was written here in Austin. spearheaded by the Tom Grimes, who was the graphics engine architect, and then a bunch of guys that were able to integrate that graphics engine with the DMX portion of the fixture. So you could just speak to the fixture as if it was a moving light. It just happened to have like over 100 channels because you had, pan and tilt and then all the media server functions. So that was it. I was back in engineering in that time period, and I'm very proud of that work because we solved a lot of really neat problems. We were speaking RS-232, DMX RS-232 to the projector to affect the zoom and focus positions of the onboard Sony projector. So it was a lot of cool technology, and it's a fun time to be back in engineering.
I have a question for you, and some of our younger listeners might be interested. When you were working in engineering, when high-end was going through this kind of revolution of changing how lights were done, on an average, how long did it take to bring something from conception to market?
Okay, so that's a great question. Things got faster, obviously. So I would say a regular project back then would take about 18 months.
Wow.
Yeah, so
that's a lot of time believing that you're putting a lot of money into something that's going to pay off.
Yes.
Talking about the history here, high-end has been at the forefront of introducing white LED engines. How did that come about?
Well, that's an interesting story because that actually goes back to when I was a digital lighting product manager. We were looking to replace the high-dollar Sanyo projector with something that we would make ourselves. So we were trying to create our own light valve of some sort that would project low-res video. So we were looking at light sources. Obviously, we knew about LEDs, and we heard about a company called Coretronics that was starting to make LED engines for small format projectors. So we had one of those engines sent to us, and out of that, we were like, wow, this is a super flat field. And out came the TrackSpot Bolt. So we were so enamored by how flat the white light field was. And at the time, we only put like dichroic chips in front of it, color chips.
Right.
So we continued on with that vision of like using white light LED as the source. There was a gap for a few years. And then my colleague, Chris Ferrante, continued working with a company called Opatronics. And at the time, they were not only making engines for digital or cinema projectors, they're working on laser cinema projector engines, but they're also working on larger format white light LED products. So when we heard that they were able to create like 10,000 lumens out of white light engine, Chris Ferrante jumped on that technology, and I'm happy to say, with the release of the SoloFrame 1000, I think it'll be our 9th generation of product. So we've been working with white light engines since 2010. So we've got quite the history with optimizing it for output as well as cooling for longevity.
What's your most powerful white light engine right now?
So right now we have the SoloFrame 3000, which is based on a 1,000-watt LED white LED source. But the thing is, like when it comes to, and that would be 37,000 lumens.
Wow.
So pretty bright. The vision from the beginning for high-end systems was to basically obsolete metal halide and halogen lamp sources. And now with the 1,000-watt LED source, there really isn't a reason when it comes to moving lights to purchase something that has older lamp technology.
Well, I must tell you that with the high-end fixtures that I have worked with and my school owns, I can say that. But with other fixtures that I've used, some recently, with the TM30, right, and CRI and all that stuff, it just, it's hard to replace that tungsten halogen color rendition. It really is, and also in ARC too, obviously. So if you're not using the best white light engine, you're going to have issues.
Well, it's always about.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
It's always about the red. It's about the red.
Yeah. So that's we have addressed that issue. We do have 2 new products. We have a high CRI engine that's 91 plus,
Right.
which
Looks great.
We have TM30 numbers on that.
Right.
I use CRI because that seems to be what everyone understands. But yeah, we should be speaking TM30. But we also have a high fidelity engine for the 3000, so that's 95 plus.
Nice.
So a lot more of the red energy is what Stan was getting at.
Yeah, it's the R9 is always the problem.
Well, Bobby, by now everyone has to know about High-End's interest in training and education for the students. And you've demonstrated that in Las Vegas year after year. For those who don't know, tell us about the Hog Factor competition and how that came about.
Okay, so the Hog Factor competition is a university lighting choreography programming contest. And it came about with our participation with our dealer in Europe. And they had something called Hog Factor in Europe. But I think it was open to the general public because we wanted to focus our energies and help tomorrow's lighting professionals. We decided to create Hog Factor here in the United States as a university competition. So basically, once a year, students, teams of 1 to 3, can sign up at highend.com at the Hog Factor page. When the students register, they'll be provided 2 files. One will be a show plot with a pre-visualization of a rig, and secondly, a Hog PC file. They use these in conjunction to create a choreographed programmed show to one of 2 songs that they can select. Once they record that, they send it to us, and we have a panel of judges that basically critique the entries. The top 3 teams, we fly to Las Vegas with their professors, and they have one more chance to compete. And on Friday afternoon, they'll showcase their last piece of work, and industry professionals will judge that on Friday afternoon. So it's a very exciting show if you haven't been to it before, and we've seen a lot of great work, and a lot of students have received job offers because of their participation in Hog Factor. And university students are introduced to the Hog programming OS.
It's amazing,
and it's been great for us, and it sort of dovetails into ETC purchased us in April of 2017, and they've got a great program geared towards university students. So our culture sort of dovetailed together, not only with university students, but there are other things that our cultures are a very good mesh.
Well, it's absolutely a showstopper. You do it at the end of the day, and it's hundreds of people just jam in there shoulder to shoulder to watch it. So it's a big hit, I think, at LDI.
It is.
Definitely well attended. It's the showstopper on the first day of LDI. Everyone comes to the high-end booth, high-end ETC booth.
And I just want to say that the real value, and there's a lot of value points here, but as an educator, to have that as a project in the spring semester is amazing, because that's basically what I do. And I know that actually Steve gave me this idea. We assign Hog Factor as one of the class assignments for our lighting designers, and they get to learn how to work with each other. High End gives us, obviously gives any university who wants to be a part of it, the show files, all that's available, and they get to actually go into a competition, which is wonderful. So it's a wonderful thing that High End is doing for education. And we've spoken about this several times on the show, but you guys really need to, be recognized for it publicly, because I don't know another company that does more for education than you guys.
No, you've been great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The other thing you notice about it is that there's clearly competition going on. And the thing that I have noticed, I've watched every Hog Factor now, and the thing I notice is those 3 teams at the end of the competition, they are hugging each other, they're high-fiving, they've all survived something together, and I mean it's a kind of amazing kind of, I don't know, little teary-eyed thing to watch, because they really cheer for each other, and it's an amazing thing you guys have done.
But a lot of that has to do with because we both have teams in there, And I think what High End does is because you guys have the dinners before and the get-togethers, that immediately it's a communal thing. I think it's really smart. Everything, that whole event is planned out so well so that it doesn't feel competitive. All the students, like, they meet each other the first day. And it's in a very nice setting. I agree with you, Steve. It is just an amazing community. So you guys really did it right.
Thank you, and it's a lot of fun to host.
Well then, Bobby Hale, thank you so much for being on Light Talk today.
On our 100th episode, yeah.
Well, all I've got to say, Bobby, is that for your sake, I'm so glad I didn't take that CFO job.
Yeah, we are too, David.
Because I think
it worked out all right for you also.
So funny. That is like, I had never heard that story before, so thanks for sharing that.
It's a story that a
cool.
few people in the industry know, and mostly people at VariLite know it because I told them, and they were like, no, we didn't do it. We didn't tell them to do it. I said, yeah, right. Okay. How to destroy a company. Let me handle your finances. Hey, guys, that Hammond organ solo tells us that once again, you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. Be sure to follow us on our Facebook group page. You can find us on any one of your favorite podcast providers. And be sure to subscribe to Light Talk. That way you will not miss 1 second of crazy Lumen insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast.
But in case you do decide to litigate us, our solid-state law firm of Chip Onboard, Loose Emitter, and Dim Ray will defend us until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers, coming to you today from Long Beach, Gainesville, the Lone Star State, and Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
And tune in next week when we discuss what exactly is white light, the best LED lecos, should you insure yourself, and to be 21 again.
All that and the new sponsor, Light Talk. We are broadcasting questionable and historical Lumen knowledge and humor from around the world.
So we'll see you all next Saturday morning. Goodbye from Light Talk, and thanks, Bobby.
And thanks, Bobby Hale.
Bobby Hale.
Bye, Bob. Thank you, guys.